What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin, John.
And we have yet another album review and yet another one that was highly anticipated for this week because I've been a longtime fan of this band.
I am not. Look, I'm stupid. There's so much I've missed out on over the years because for a long time I was into hardcore and then tech death and then, my doomy dissonant chuggy shit. And I never really gave this band a chance, and I should have, and I will now in the future. Man.
And that band is My Dying Bride with their new album, Immortal Binding. This also comes out on the 19th of April on Nuclear Blast Records. This band formed in 1990 in England, part of the Peaceville Four, along with Catatonia, Anathema, and Paradise Lost. This is their 15th album overall. I actually reviewed their last one, The Ghost of Orion, which was a particularly depressing and harrowing album. I know that's kind of like standard gear for this band, but that one definitely dealt with a lot of personal issues. I know that Aaron Stanthorpe's daughter was going through cancer treatment, so that one had a good reason to be particularly sad and morose. But that is kind of the gear of this band anyway. They're one of the OG bands in terms of death doom, one of the pioneers of the sound, and arguably the most depressing band on the planet. Like, seriously, like I was looking at your shirt, you're wearing Dead Congregation. They would probably look at that like, man, that sounds like a fun party. They're so depressing to the point where I think if they go to the bathroom and take a pee, they're probably like, man, those are tears I could have cried.
Yeah, crying pee tears does not sound like the greatest of times.
No, this band has never been about great times or about morose times. This band wouldn't play the opening of a club, they would play the opening of a coffin. This is My Dying Bride, and I have been absolutely stoked to hear this one. I checked out the singles, and I did like the last one. Again, it was particularly sad, and the fact that it wasn't just sort of a vague sad, it was very directed at one thing. This is kind of back to just the standard sadness, which, My Dying Bride excels at, but man, honestly, I think this is just like very dynamic and a much bigger sounding album than maybe the last couple have been.
Now, it's not that I'm not familiar with what this band does. I mean, obviously, I've heard songs here and there over the years. It's kind of hard to escape, especially when you're in the business that we're in. I've jammed Paradise Lost, so obviously, that's a great comparison. I'm a giant Catatonia fan, so it would make sense that I at least kind of knew what I was getting into. But there's so much in here that I didn't expect. And right off the bat, it would be how heavy it was. The opening song, Her Dominion, starts out with this big descending bummer melody, and then it gets into this like start-stop groove, and then just heavy big chugs, and I thought, dude, wow.
I was actually a little shocked at how heavy it started off because, the last couple, they're definitely heavy. It's My Dying Bride. Of course they're heavy. But they've definitely, pushed more with, clean vocals here lately, which Aaron is, excellent at those too. But this song, I don't think has any clean vocals on it. And this one really kind of brings out, a bit more of their death metal side overall. This is just a really biting, snarling, albeit very slow and lumbering song, and it kind of sets up the album like a little bit of a surprise right out of the gate. And don't worry, it gets down to that balance of bleak crooning, violins, and just the most dreary riffs. But there's a good amount of dreary but also aggressive riffs on here.
Yeah, and a good example of that would be Unthroned Creed. That is a riffy bastard of a song. And the riffs, because of how slow it is, obviously, and again, if you like My Dying Bride, you already know this, but because of how slow it is, these riffs are so gigantic and have so much room to breathe, which really does a great job of setting the tone for this song.
Yeah, while the tone of the entire album is absolutely miserable.
Bummer.
But there, again, there's some, aggression, and in terms of the songwriting, great transitions, lots of sections where they will isolate instruments, whether it is, Aaron's vocals, Andrew Cragen's riffs, which, the riff work on here is fantastic. Even the bass lines, occasionally the violin, which the violin in this band, if you already weren't completely bummed out by an absolutely melancholy and dreary riff, which this album is built on, which this entire discography is built on, the violins will add so much to it, and the interplay between all of that.
Yeah, dude. The string section always seems to come in at a really, like, pinnacle moment for the riff. It's usually when the riff harmonizes, and then they stick the strings on it to harmonize it even more. And as depressive as that is, because trust me, the bridge of Unthrown Creed made me really happy that I wasn't standing on the edge of a cliff. But, like, the interplay between the strings and the guitars, it just makes it so goddamn pretty.
Yeah, and the riffs, kind of alternate between like death metal riffs, big droning, heavy, doomy chugs, and occasionally like kind of like folky melodies. A Starving Heart. The opening of that song is very clean, lots of like acoustic passages, and of course the violin. It's like being serenaded by the world's most depressed minstrel, because it has this kind of like classic sound to it, and then it just sort of picks up the pace. That doesn't feel right. Picks up the bleakness. That feels better. With a big isolated doomy riff, and then just slow and bleak and dreary as hell. Like, that is the standard gear of this band, and they do it so damn well. But I have to say, like, even songs like Unthrown Creed, there's a little bit more like pep. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, it's bright and sunny out, I'll go for a jog. No, it's rainy and dark, but they're at least moving a little bit faster.
Yeah, because they throw in these really like heavy chugged verses. Sometimes the drums will pick up the pace a little bit. A really cool part on A Starving Heart was there's this really neat stuttered bass and snare pattern. It makes it a little bit more bouncy and like alive.
Yeah, the syncopation on here is really interesting in terms of like, well, you have a lot of this open space because, again, you have a lot of, like, droning riffs on here. Like, there's definitely moments where they are chuggier and, kind of, like, saturate the sound a bit more. But a lot of it, big, droning harmonies that just make you weep. But underneath that, there's a lot of, like, really interesting rhythmic patterns. Like, I think the drum work in here is really fantastic, even though it's, like, moving pretty damn slow. There's some really good, like, double kick grooves on here. Yep. And like some fun off-time rhythms, really clever fills. Again, like if this was all sped up, like you might hear like a little bit of Iron Maiden in some of these
that's fair.
Harmonies. Granted, like Iron Maiden, that you'd be concerned like things aren't going well in the band because you hear the melodies like, wow, dude.
Wait a minute.
You guys all right? What about like Run to the Hills? Like, no, I'll just crawl up that hill.
Yeah. Or roll down the hill.
Yeah.
Because, who wants to do anything really?
But in terms of sounding like just defeated and broken, man, like that last level of just capturing that are definitely Aaron's vocals. Alternating between these long, drawn out, like very mopey, clean vocals where he conveys a ton of emotion and most of them are just misery. But it adds, again, that other level to make it sound as depressing as it does. But surprisingly, there's some really heavy sections that come out. Like on Thornwick Hymn, which I don't know if Thornwick's a place. It sounds pretty cool. It sounds like there's probably a witch that's the mayor or something like that. Who knows? But there is like kind of an out of nowhere moment where it just gets absolutely devastating. It's like, whoa, man, this is just kind of brutal and like kind of a callback to like their earlier stuff, like As the Flower Withers, which is still kind of one of my favorites.
Yep.
And there are some absolutely crushing, just devastating riffs on the Apocalyptist, which is a totally made-up word, and I wanted to screw that one up, but luckily I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that song is Bummerville. I mean, you get 11 minutes and 22 seconds. I double-dosed my Zoloft today because I wanted to make sure I was okay after listening to this.
Good instincts.
That song, as depressive as it is, dude, the first verse is almost bloodbath. It is heavy as all get out.
I love how it sets it up with like just this absolutely bleak mood and then just changes gears to, again, like kind of callbacks to their more death metal sound in the earlier years. Like it is just flat out crushing and slow. And the song is 11 minutes and 22 seconds. And, much like any bout of depression, it does last quite a while.
Sometimes years.
Both together. But this song, I think, honestly, is probably my favorite on here. And it doesn't feel like, almost 12 minutes long. The transitions, I think, are really clever. There's lots of points of isolation on it where they kind of just break it down for a little bit and then build into the next part. And I think the songwriting on here, I think, is just flat out fantastic. Like, it is paced really well, and there's lots of points that have just like these huge welling up of emotions.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're gonna do absolutely just soul-crushing, depressing music, there has to be some like legit fucking depression behind it.
Well, and the last, like, 2.5 minutes of this song are the doomiest. This is straight Velveteen Rabbit depression.
Yeah, between that and the second of Three Bells, yeah, those songs kind of run like, you know, having to put down the family dog and everyone's gathered around crying. Like, it is unbearably sad at points. But honestly, like, there's like a good like kind of shift around there, because not only are you being suffocated by the dreary atmosphere in here, there's a lot of like really solid riffs. Like, honestly, these are some of the coolest riffs I've heard, you know, Cragen do in a while. Like, there's a lot of balance between like the intense moments and the more just sullen, just drearier than hell ones, and so many just great melodic hooks. Like, this album is really catchy at points. And I'm sure if Aaron wasn't singing about the most depressing thing he possibly can at the moment, you had like, you know, something that was a little bit more emotionally neutral, I guess. Sure. On top of that, like, yeah, that'd be like a really good, solid kind of like, you know, heavy hook there. But I like the fact that it stays somber and just dark as hell. But man, again, it's catchy. Like, there are earworms all over here.
Everywhere. Every song.
Yeah. And for as long as the songs are, like, most of them are around like 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 9 minutes. I mean, we had, again, an 11.5-minute one. They don't feel like they drag on very much.
And especially the last song, Crushed Embers, which I think is arguably the most depressive song on here. The song is so sad it made me want to take a bunch of Tylenol PM and smother myself with my own pillow while crying.
Oh man, this is like an ugly cry song.
Yeah,
like.
God damn it. It's sad, but man, there are some ghastly riffs in this song, and the descending harmonies in here are just something else. And again, the string interplay with the guitars, it's something magical in here.
This song in particular, I feel like the violin really shines on it. Like, it really drives a lot of the melodies, because the riffs kind of stay just drony and thick. Like, about as thick as all the dirt that is shoveled on top of a grave. Like, that's how thick. That's kind of appropriate. But the violins, I feel like just because the riffs are droning, the violins kind of just take that lead sort of melody, and they actually harmonize with a lot of Aaron's vocals. So, yeah, there's this just very somber, very melancholy, rainy, almost kind of funeral doom-ish.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I mean, I'm sure this band definitely inspired that form, too. Like, it's kind of different than My Dying Bride. I don't know. Like, both you could play at a funeral, and both would be really fitting.
I mean, it flirts with Funeral Doom at times, and I would stretch so far to say that I would think that Funeral Doom at least drew some sort of something out of this band to create that dismal emotion that is Funeral Doom.
Yeah, this band is just excellent at writing songs that want to drag you down with them. And this, honestly, is absolutely solid across the board. Like, for the life of me, it is really hard for me to pick apart this in terms of things I didn't like, because I feel like this is exactly what I want from My Dying Bride. There are a few maybe note choices in terms of Aaron's delivery, like especially on Crushed Embers. There is a part there where he kind of tries to do a long, drawn out, like kind of almost like a throat singing sort of, you know, note, but it comes off a little flat. But outside of that, like, that's the only one. Like, I did think his harsh vocals kind of sounded a little bit weak on Her Domain, but the rest of the album, like, when he comes in, they sound sinister and just dark as hell.
As for me, I honestly don't have any complaints. I guess a complaint that I could fire off would be, why the hell haven't I listened to My Dying Bride more? Because I thought this album was wonderful. I mean, yeah, it's depressive as shit, but it's so pretty, and just everything is executed well, and it's so riffy and catchy.
Yeah. I mean, well, I can think of one complaint now. The fact that they're not playing MDF, and they kind of just recently bailed, and I don't know what's going on in the band. I guess they canceled all their touring, and, you know, I sense something is going on, and man, I was hyped to see them. Like, they never come to the States. And, you know, this might have been like the only opportunity because apparently they only do like festivals and such.
And, you know, especially me never having really dove into this band much or heard much of their material, watching how hyped he was for it, I was like, dude, I got to at least check it out. Like, I was looking forward to it, and now it's not there, and that's grossly upsetting. I know a lot of people wanted them to be in MDF. I know because I've been watching the threads. Like, it's grossly unfortunate.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm definitely going to have to watch Esoteric now just because, you know, My Dying Bride. I was going to watch them anyway.
Right. Esoteric came recommended to me. I haven't jammed much of them either, so I guess, according to what Nick says, they're pretty damn close, so I'm going to do it. Anyway, back to this record. I'm going to go ahead and give it 4.5 stars. I thought this record was amazing. Pretty much from start to finish. It's riffy, it's catchy. When it dooms so hard, it's crushing. Much like Crushed Embers or Crushed Hopes and Dreams in this case. The harmonies are beautiful. The string work is beautiful. It transitions nicely. It feels sinister and mean, yet sad, like the first week of lockdown, like that kind of depression. Just like, shit, I can't go anywhere anymore, ever.
Well, time to masturbate again.
For the 15th time today, my poor junk.
It's getting chafed.
I haven't listened to much My Dying Bride, but I guarantee you that after this, I'm definitely going to dive into this. Probably slowly, because that's how they move. Probably even a little bit slower, because I don't have medical insurance at the moment, and I need to see a therapist. Obviously, they need to see a therapist. If you listen to this, you're probably going to need to see a therapist, but you should check it out. I don't have a whole lot to compare it to other than the bands I already love, Paradise Lost, Catatonia, things like that. Definitely check this record out. Again, I was wonderfully surprised and will be listening to more of My Dying Bride in the future.
I am going to go with a 4, and it could possibly grow into a 4.5. I was surprised, even as a longtime fan, just because coming off the last album, I feel like this is, again, like, I don't know, I feel like energetic is the right word because, again, it moves very slowly and, you know, it's just so bleak and defeated. But that's exactly what I want out of My Dying Bride. It feels more, I don't know, just dynamic. Like, I think the songs are absolutely fantastic. There really isn't, like, a lull in any of this, too. And for an album that clocks at, like, almost 55 minutes, it honestly flows really well. Like, it doesn't really drag, and I think everyone's performances on here are excellent. Yeah. The production sounds amazing. Yeah. The string work is as beautiful as it has ever been for this band, and man, does that just capture a whole other level of depression as if they really needed to.
Right.
This album is just chock full of just killer standout moments and great memorable riffs. Honestly, I mean, The Apocalyptist is probably like a new favorite of mine in terms of like My Dying Bride's at least recent output, because I have a lot of favorites from the past. But yeah, if you're a longtime fan of this band, and again, like Paradise Lost, Gothram, which there's a good reason why you should like them too, because Hamish used to be in this band. Early Anathema, of course, Catatonia, Esoteric, Funeral, Skepticism, tons of just depressing bands that just don't go out during the daylight because the sun might ruin their depressed mood. So, you know, that might just hamper their songwriting. Because I was going to say, like, if these guys did get therapy, that might just completely derail their career. Like, they'll come out with, like, a very happy album, and everyone's going to be like, dude,
come out with, like, a pop punk record.
No. But yeah, this is an absolutely killer album. And again, pretty much exactly what I wanted from this band. Yeah, check this one out. Go buy a copy. Listen to it, maybe with friends, maybe not in a dark room, maybe not in a rainy day.
Yeah.
I don't know. It depends on how much of the mood you want, because this band's going to be supplying a lot of it.
Yeah, this is not a Monday album. Don't do that to yourself.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel up in the bottom right-hand corner of our banner. But if you're looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have t-shirts, both old and new. The old ones are discounted, provided we have your size. We also have hats too, so if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
Last but not least, tons of stuff going on at Thralls of Metal, whether it be album reviews or discography rankings. We will get to Meshuggah here soon. Probably not in the next month because we're going to MDF, and that trumps really everything. But yeah, a discography ranking, states of metal, tons of stuff. We are constantly busy here because...
We're obsessed lunatics.
Well, yep. And we do it for you guys because you guys give us so much back in return. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule. Tons of album reviews coming. This month is definitely packed. I imagine May is going to be packed too. So yeah, tons of that. And we're just going to keep overloading you with content because you guys are absolutely awesome. Yeah. So one more time of me calling you absolutely awesome because I can squeeze one in. And we will catch you later.